There's a fortress that exists inside the mind of every person who has ever achieved something extraordinary. You can't see it from the outside. It doesn't announce itself, but it's there, silent, immovable, built brick by brick from decisions made in darkness, from failures absorbed and transformed, from doubts faced down until they had no choice but to surrender. This fortress is not given. It is not inherited. It is constructed deliberately, stone by stone, through the conscious architecture of thought. And the moment you understand this, the moment you realize that confidence is not a personality trait, but a structure you build with your own hands, everything changes. Most people walk through life waiting to feel ready, waiting for permission, waiting for circumstances to align perfectly before they make their move. They treat confidence like it's supposed to arrive, like a package at their door, fully assembled, ready to use. But that's not how it works. That's never been how it works. Thomas Edison didn't stumble into his laboratory one morning feeling invincible. Henry Ford didn't wake up certain he could revolutionize industry. Andrew Carnegie didn't inherit unwavering self-belief along with his first paycheck. These men built their confidence the same way they built their empires, through deliberate construction, relentless effort, and an understanding that what you believe about yourself is the single most important factor in what you become. The truth that separates those who rise from those who remain is this: confidence is a fortress, and you are its architect. Every thought you choose is a brick. Every action you take is mortar. Every fear you face is a reinforced wall. And every excuse you reject is another layer of protection against the chaos that seeks to tear you down. The question is not whether you're capable of building this fortress. The question is whether you're willing to do the work that nobody sees, to make the choices that nobody celebrates, to lay foundations in the dark when there's no guarantee of what will stand in the light. Right now, in this moment, your mind is either building or crumbling. There is no neutral ground. Every thought you entertain either strengthens your fortress or weakens its walls. When you tell yourself you're not ready, you're removing a brick. When you compare yourself to others and find yourself lacking, you're creating cracks in the foundation. When you replay your failures like a broken record, you're inviting the enemy inside the gates. But when you choose a thought of capability, when you remember a moment you overcame, when you speak to yourself the way you would speak to someone, you're training for battle, you're building, you're fortifying, you're creating something that can withstand the storms. The architecture of unbreakable confidence begins with a single non-negotiable principle. You must become the guardian of your own mind. Not sometimes, not when it's convenient, always. Because your mind is under constant siege. Every doubt that crosses your awareness, every fear that whispers in the quiet moments, every voice that tells you to play it safe, these are not random thoughts. They are invaders testing your defenses, looking for weaknesses, searching for a way in. And if you're not vigilant, if you're not ruthlessly selective about what you allow to take root in your consciousness, they will find that weakness. They will exploit it, and your fortress will fall before you even realize you're under attack. Napoleon Hill spent 20 years studying the most successful people of his era, and he discovered something that most people never grasp. The battlefield of achievement is fought entirely within the mind. It's not about talent. It's not about luck. It's not even about circumstances. It's about the ability to control your inner world with such precision that external chaos becomes irrelevant. Hill called it definiteness of purpose, but it goes deeper than that. It's about understanding that your thoughts are not passive observations, they are active commands. They are instructions to your subconscious mind, directives to your nervous system, blueprints for the reality you will construct. When Edison failed 1,000 times before creating the light bulb, do you think he maintained his confidence because he felt like it? Do you think he woke up every morning after another failed experiment filled with certainty and enthusiasm? No. He maintained his confidence because he had built a fortress in his mind that failure could not penetrate. He had structured his thinking in such a way that every failed attempt was not a defeat but data, not a setback but a step forward. He had trained his mind to interpret reality through a lens of inevitable success, and that lens was constructed deliberately, consciously, with the same precision he applied to his inventions. This is what most people miss. They think confidence comes from success, but it's the exact opposite. Success comes from confidence. The fortress must be built before the battle, not during it. You don't wait until you're standing in the arena to start constructing your defenses. You build them now, in the quiet moments, in the unglamorous hours when nobody's watching and nothing seems to be happening. You build them by controlling your internal dialogue with ruthless discipline. You build them by choosing empowering meanings for your experiences instead of disempowering ones. You build them by training your mind to see possibility where others see limitation. Consider the mind of someone with unbreakable confidence. It's not that they don't experience doubt, they do. It's not that they don't face fear, they face it constantly. The difference is in how they process these experiences. Where the average person allows doubt to metastasize into paralysis, the confident person observes the doubt, acknowledges it, and chooses a more useful thought. Where the average person interprets fear as a stop sign, the confident person interprets it as confirmation they're moving in the right direction. They build a fortress where doubt and fear can knock on the gates all they want, but they can't get inside. They can't influence the decisions. They can't corrupt the vision. This is not about positive thinking. This is not about affirmations or mantras or any of the superficial techniques that people use to paper over their insecurities. This is about fundamentally restructuring the way you process reality. It's about understanding that confidence is not a feeling, it's a decision. It's a decision you make 1,000 times a day. Every time you choose which thought to believe, which voice to listen to, which interpretation of events to accept as true. And these decisions, accumulated over time, either build a fortress that nothing can shake or leave you exposed to every wind of circumstance. The foundation of this fortress is self-trust. Not arrogance, not self-delusion, self-trust. The bone-deep knowing that whatever happens, you will handle it, that whatever challenge arises, you will find a way through it. That whatever setback occurs, you will extract the lesson and move forward stronger. This kind of trust is not built through success, it's built through survival. Through facing the thing you feared and discovering you're still standing. Through attempting what seemed impossible and learning you're more capable than you believed. Through failing publicly and realizing that failure didn't destroy you, it revealed your strength. Lincoln lost elections. His business failed. He suffered from depression. He faced rejection and humiliation that would have crushed most people. But each of these experiences became a brick in his fortress. Each loss taught him that he could endure loss. Each failure proved he could survive failure. And by the time he reached the presidency and faced the existential crisis of a nation tearing itself apart, he had built a fortress of confidence so strong that the pressure of the entire country could not collapse it. He trusted himself because he had proof, not proof of constant success, but proof of constant resilience. This is the paradox that most people can't comprehend. Confidence is built through difficulty, not despite it. The fortress grows strongest where the attacks are most intense. Every moment you choose to show up when you don't feel like it. Every time you push through resistance when quitting would be easier. Every instance you face your fear instead of avoiding it. These are the moments when the walls grow higher, the foundation deepens. The structure becomes unshakable. You're not building confidence by waiting for perfect conditions. You're building it by acting without them. The second pillar of this fortress is clarity of vision. You cannot build something magnificent if you don't know what you're building. The mind that lacks direction is a mind under constant invasion, because without a clear vision of what you're moving toward, every distraction looks like an opportunity and every obstacle looks like a reason to quit. But when you have crystallized in your mind exactly what you're constructing, exactly what you stand for, exactly where you're headed, doubt loses its power because you're not making it up as you go along. You're executing a plan. You're following a blueprint that exists in your mind with such clarity that external noise cannot distort it. Carnegie understood this. Before he became one of the wealthiest men in history, he wrote down exactly what he intended to achieve. Not vague wishes, not hopeful thoughts, precise, detailed, specific outcomes. He created a blueprint in his mind first, and then he simply spent the rest of his life building according to that blueprint. The confidence wasn't in knowing the path would be easy. The confidence was in knowing exactly where the path led. And when you know your destination with absolute clarity, every step forward feels certain, even when the terrain is treacherous. Most people live their lives in a fog of ambiguity. They want success, but they haven't defined what success means. They want confidence, but they haven't identified what they would be confident about. They want to feel powerful, but they haven't clarified what power they're trying to build. And without this clarity, the mind has nothing to anchor to. It drifts. It doubts. It second-guesses every decision because there's no North Star, no reference point, no ultimate vision that makes the immediate difficulty worthwhile. The fortress of confidence requires a flag at its highest point, a clear declaration of what this structure exists to protect and what it's being built to achieve. Your vision is your shield against the opinions of others. When you know with absolute certainty what you're building, what other people think becomes background noise. Not because you're arrogant, but because you're focused. You're executing a plan that exists in your mind with such precision that criticism cannot penetrate it. Ford faced ridicule when he proposed putting America on wheels. Disney was told his ideas were too expensive, too risky, too childish. But their visions were so clear, so vivid in their minds, that external doubt had nowhere to land. The fortress was built around a vision that could not be shaken by external opinion. This clarity must be renewed daily, not because the vision changes, but because the mind forgets. Because life is chaos, and chaos erodes structure. Every morning, you must rebuild the walls. Every evening, you must inspect for damage. This is not optional maintenance. This is the price of unbreakable confidence. You sit with your vision. You see it clearly. You remind yourself why it matters. You reconnect with the burning purpose that makes all the difficulty worthwhile. And in doing so, you fortify the structure. You make it stronger than it was yesterday. You ensure that when tomorrow's attacks come, and they will come, the fortress stands firm. The third pillar is radical self-honesty. This is where most fortresses crumble before they're ever completed, because people lie to themselves. They construct confidence on false foundations, on pretense, on comparison, on borrowed beliefs they never actually tested. And when reality inevitably collides with fantasy, the whole structure collapses. Unbreakable confidence is not built on delusion. It's built on truth, on an unflinching assessment of where you actually are, what you actually know, what you're actually capable of in this moment, not where you wish you were, not what you hope to be capable of someday. Right now, today, this moment, the confident person looks in the mirror and sees clearly. They don't inflate their abilities, and they don't diminish them. They assess with the cold precision of an engineer examining a blueprint. These are my strengths, these are my weaknesses, these are the skills I possess. These are the skills I must develop. This is what I know. This is what I don't know yet. And from that foundation of truth, they build something real, something that can withstand scrutiny, something that doesn't collapse the moment someone questions it or circumstances challenge it. Hill wrote about the power of autosuggestion. But autosuggestion without honesty is just fantasy. You can repeat affirmations all day long, but if there's no genuine foundation beneath them, if you're trying to convince yourself of something you know isn't true, the fortress you're building is made of cardboard. It looks impressive from a distance, but the moment any real pressure is applied, it folds. Real confidence comes from knowing yourself so thoroughly that you can stand on that knowledge like bedrock. You know what you can do because you've done it. You know what you can handle because you've handled it. And what you haven't done yet, you're honest enough to acknowledge you'll need to develop the capacity for. This is why failure is so valuable to the construction of confidence. It forces honesty. When you fail, you can't lie to yourself about where you actually are. The gap between where you thought you were and where you actually are becomes painfully clear. And in that clarity, if you're brave enough to look without flinching, you find the truth you need to build something real. You find out what actually needs to be strengthened, what actually needs to be learned, where the foundation actually needs reinforcement. Failure is the inspector that reveals the cracks in your fortress, and if you're wise, you don't hide those cracks, you repair them. The people with unbreakable confidence are not the ones who never fail. They're the ones who fail and use that failure to build stronger. Edison didn't pretend his failures weren't failures. He acknowledged them completely and then extracted every lesson, every insight, every piece of data that would make the next attempt better. His confidence grew not because he avoided failure, but because he became so skilled at learning from it that failure became fuel rather than defeat. Each failure was another brick in the fortress, another reinforcement, another reason to trust that he could handle whatever came next. Radical honesty also means admitting when you don't know, when you're uncertain, when you're afraid. The pretense of knowing damages confidence more than the admission of ignorance ever could, because when you pretend to know, you stop learning. You stop asking questions, you stop seeking truth, and the fortress you're building becomes isolated from reality, disconnected from the feedback that would make it stronger. But when you can stand in your uncertainty without shame, when you can say, I don't know yet, but I will find out, when you can acknowledge fear without letting it control you, that's when real power emerges. That's when the fortress becomes unshakable, because it's built on truth, not pretense. The fourth pillar is relentless action. You cannot think your way to confidence. You cannot visualize your way to confidence. You cannot read your way to confidence. These things support the process, but the fortress is built through action, through doing the thing that scares you, through showing up when you don't feel ready, through executing even when the outcome is uncertain. Every action you take is proof to your subconscious mind that you are who you say you are. Every time you follow through on a commitment to yourself, you're adding another layer of protection to the fortress. Every time you do what you said you would do, you're strengthening the walls. This is why discipline is inseparable from confidence. Discipline is the bridge between vision and reality, between who you are and who you're becoming. When you discipline yourself to act regardless of how you feel, you're training your mind to trust you. You're demonstrating to yourself, through repeated evidence, that you are reliable, that you are capable, that when you set an intention, it gets executed. And over time, this creates an internal certainty that no external circumstance can shake. Because you've proven to yourself, again and again, that you do what you say you'll do. Most people have it backwards. They think they need to feel confident before they take action. They wait for certainty before they move. But confidence is the result of action, not the prerequisite for it. You act first, and confidence follows. You show up scared, and courage is built in the showing up. You execute imperfectly, and confidence is developed through the execution. The fortress is not built in moments of certainty, it's built in moments of doubt when you choose to move forward anyway, when you feel unprepared but prepare through action, when you feel incapable but build capability through doing. Consider the entrepreneur who starts before they're ready, who launches before the product is perfect, who sells before they feel confident in their pitch. Are they reckless? Sometimes. Are they scared? Always. But they understand something fundamental. Confidence comes from reps, from repetitions, from doing the thing enough times that it becomes familiar, then competent, then masterful. You cannot skip this process. You cannot think your way through it. You must act your way into confidence. And every action, successful or not, is a brick in the fortress. The trap that destroys most people's confidence is overthinking. They analyze endlessly, they plan meticulously, they prepare exhaustively, and they never build anything because they're waiting for a certainty that doesn't exist. But the fortress is not built in the mind alone, it's built in reality, through tangible action, through results that can be measured and observed. When you take action, even small action, even imperfect action, you create evidence. Evidence that you're moving, evidence that you're capable, evidence that the vision in your mind can manifest in reality. And that evidence, accumulated over time, becomes the foundation of unbreakable confidence. Action also teaches you something that thinking never can. You're more resilient than you believe. When you actually face the thing you feared and discover you survive it, when you actually attempt what seemed impossible and make progress, when you actually show up in the arena and realize you belong there, the fortress grows exponentially, because now you have proof. Not theoretical confidence based on what you think you could do, actual confidence based on what you have done, based on battles fought and survived, based on fears faced and overcome, based on commitments made and kept. The fifth pillar is selective association. Your fortress exists in an environment, and that environment either supports its construction or undermines it. The people you surround yourself with, the content you consume, the conversations you engage in, these are not neutral forces. They are either strengthening your walls or creating erosion. And if you're serious about building unbreakable confidence, you must become ruthlessly selective about what influences you allow into your mental space. Carnegie surrounded himself with masterminds, groups of people aligned around similar visions, similar standards, similar commitments to excellence, not because he needed validation, but because he understood that the mind absorbs the energy and beliefs of its environment. If you're constantly around people who doubt, who complain, who settle, who accept mediocrity, that becomes the water you swim in. That becomes the air you breathe. And no matter how strong your individual resolve, the environment will slowly erode the fortress. But if you deliberately construct an environment of excellence, of high standards, of people committed to growth and achievement, the fortress is reinforced by every interaction. This doesn't mean surrounding yourself with yes men. It means surrounding yourself with people who believe in possibility, who challenge you to grow, who hold you to the standards you've set for yourself, people who see your vision clearly enough to support it and respect you enough to tell you the truth when you're falling short. The fortress is not built in isolation, but it must be protected from toxic influences, from people who project their limitations onto you, from voices that speak doubt when you need clarity, from energy that drains rather than fuels. You are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with, not because you consciously adopt their beliefs, but because proximity shapes perception. If you're around people who think small, you'll unconsciously calibrate your vision to match theirs. If you're around people who avoid risk, you'll find yourself hesitating when you should be moving. But if you're around people who think big, who take calculated risks, who execute with precision, you'll find your own standards rising to meet the environment. The fortress is strengthened by the company it keeps. The same principle applies to information. What you read, watch, and listen to is constructing your reality, whether you realize it or not. If you consume content that reinforces limitation, that celebrates victimhood, that glorifies comfort over growth, you're feeding those beliefs into your subconscious mind. You're instructing your brain to see the world through that lens. But if you deliberately consume content that expands your thinking, that challenges your assumptions, that shows you what's possible when people commit fully, you're fortifying the fortress. You're giving your mind the raw materials to build something extraordinary. This is why he'll emphasize the importance of autosuggestion through repetition. Not empty repetition, but deliberate, conscious feeding of empowering ideas into the subconscious. Read biographies of people who built what you're trying to build. Study the philosophies of those who achieved what you're trying to achieve. Immerse yourself in content that reinforces the beliefs you need to hold to become who you're becoming, not as escapism, but as construction. Every book, every conversation, every piece of content is either a brick in your fortress or a crack in its foundation. The 6th pillar is emotional mastery. Confidence that crumbles under pressure is not real confidence, it's bravado, it's pretense masquerading as strength. Unbreakable confidence requires the ability to maintain your center when everything around you is chaos, to stay calm when others panic, to think clearly when emotions are screaming, to execute your plan when fear is demanding you retreat. This doesn't mean suppressing emotion, it means mastering it, understanding it, using it as information rather than letting it dictate your actions. Every emotion you experience is data. Fear tells you something matters. Anger tells you a boundary has been violated. Anxiety tells you you're facing uncertainty. But these emotions are not commands, they're signals. And the person with unbreakable confidence has learned to observe these signals without being controlled by them. They feel fear and act anyway. They experience doubt and move forward regardless. They notice anxiety and use it to sharpen their focus rather than scatter their attention. The fortress is built by mastering the internal weather so that external storms become irrelevant. This mastery comes through practice, through deliberately putting yourself in situations that trigger emotion and then learning to maintain control. The boxer who trains not just his body but his mind, who learns to stay calm when he's hit, who maintains strategy when instinct is screaming at him to abandon the plan, this is emotional mastery. The entrepreneur who feels the terror of potential failure but makes the decision anyway, who experiences the crushing weight of responsibility but carries it without complaint, this is emotional mastery. The artist who faces rejection and criticism but continues creating from authentic vision rather than fear, this is emotional mastery. Most people are controlled by their emotions because they've never trained themselves to do otherwise. They feel anxious, so they avoid. They feel discouraged, so they quit. They feel inadequate, so they hide. And every time they allow emotion to dictate action, they weaken the fortress. They prove to themselves that they cannot be trusted, that their feelings are more powerful than their commitments, that comfort matters more than growth. But when you train yourself to acknowledge emotion without being ruled by it, when you can say, I feel terrified and I'm doing this anyway, when you can separate feeling from action, the fortress becomes impenetrable. This is not about becoming emotionless. It's about becoming wise in how you respond to emotion. It's about understanding that the feeling of fear doesn't mean you're in danger, it means you're growing. The feeling of doubt doesn't mean you should quit, it means you're attempting something that matters. The feeling of discomfort doesn't mean something is wrong, it means you're expanding beyond your current limits. The fortress is built by people who've learned to reinterpret their emotional experiences through the lens of growth rather than the lens of protection. Lincoln felt the weight of depression throughout his life. He didn't pretend it away. He didn't suppress it, but he also didn't allow it to determine his actions. He felt the darkness and led a nation through its darkest hour anyway. He experienced the crushing doubt and made decisions that required absolute certainty anyway. He carried emotional weight that would have destroyed lesser men, and he used it to develop a depth of compassion and strength that made him one of history's greatest leaders. His fortress was built not by avoiding emotional difficulty, but by learning to function at the highest level despite it. The 7th pillar is continuous learning. Confidence that's static is confidence that's dying, because the world changes, circumstances evolve. What worked yesterday might not work tomorrow. And if your confidence is built on outdated knowledge, on skills that are no longer relevant, on strategies that circumstances have rendered obsolete, your fortress will crumble. Unbreakable confidence requires the humility to recognize that you can always improve, the curiosity to seek out what you don't know, and the discipline to continuously sharpen the tools you're building with. The most confident people you'll ever meet are also the most committed learners, not because they lack confidence, but because their confidence is rooted in a growth mindset. They know they can figure things out. They know they can adapt. They know they can learn whatever is needed to solve whatever problem arises. This creates a confidence that's not brittle, not dependent on specific circumstances remaining constant. It's flexible, resilient, anti-fragile. The fortress stands because it's constantly being reinforced with new knowledge, new skills, new understanding. Ford didn't just build cars, he rebuilt his entire understanding of manufacturing multiple times throughout his career. When his methods became outdated, he learned new ones. When technology evolved, he evolved with it. His confidence wasn't rooted in knowing everything, it was rooted in the certainty that he could learn anything, that whatever challenge arose, he had the capacity to develop the knowledge needed to overcome it. This is the confidence of the perpetual student, the eternal learner, the person who sees every obstacle as a curriculum. This means reading, studying, seeking mentorship, analyzing your results, extracting lessons from every experience, not just consuming information, but actively processing it, testing it, integrating it into your operating system. Every book you read with full attention is adding to the fortress. Every skill you develop through deliberate practice is strengthening the walls. Every principle you understand deeply enough to apply is another layer of protection against incompetence and irrelevance. The trap is thinking you've arrived, thinking you know enough, thinking your current level of understanding is sufficient. The moment you stop learning, the fortress begins to decay, not because what you know becomes useless, but because the world around you keeps moving, your competitors keep learning, circumstances keep evolving, and standing still in a moving world is the same as moving backwards. The fortress must be constantly updated, constantly improved, constantly reinforced with fresh knowledge and new capabilities. This learning cannot be passive. You cannot build a fortress by casually consuming content. It requires active engagement, taking notes, testing ideas, applying concepts, failing in extracting lessons, succeeding in understanding why. The fortress is built through the integration of knowledge into action, through the transformation of information into wisdom through experience. Every lesson learned and applied is a brick. Every principle understood and executed is mortar. Every skill developed to the point of unconscious competence is another wall between you and defeat. The eighth pillar is purpose-driven action. Confidence without purpose is just ego. It's hollow. It might look impressive, but it serves nothing beyond itself. Unbreakable confidence is built when your actions are aligned with something larger than your own comfort, your own validation, your own immediate gratification. When you're building something that matters, when you're committed to a purpose that transcends your individual needs, the fortress becomes unshakable. Because it's not just about you anymore. It's about the mission, and missions don't quit when things get hard. Hill spoke extensively about the power of a definite chief aim, a burning purpose so clear and compelling that all other considerations fade in comparison. This is not just goal setting. This is the identification of why you exist, what you're here to build, what mark you intend to leave on the world. And when this purpose is clear, when it's been forged in the fire of deep reflection and honest self-assessment, it becomes the foundation of a confidence that cannot be shaken. Because you're not moving toward a goal, you're fulfilling a calling. Disney didn't build his empire because he wanted to be rich. He built it because he had a vision of bringing joy and wonder to the world through storytelling and innovation. That purpose sustained him through bankruptcy, through betrayal, through countless setbacks that would have ended someone operating from ego alone. But when you're driven by purpose, when you're committed to something that matters beyond your own success, you find strength you didn't know you possessed. The fortress stands because it's built on bedrock that goes deeper than personal ambition. This is why people who are only motivated by money, status, or recognition often crumble under real pressure, because those motivations are external. They depend on circumstances, on other people's validation, on outcomes you can't fully control. But when your motivation is internal, when it's rooted in a commitment to create value, to solve problems, to build something meaningful, that motivation cannot be taken from you. Market crashes can't destroy it. Criticism can't diminish it. Failure can't extinguish it. The fortress is built on purpose, and purpose is the only foundation strong enough to withstand everything life will throw at it. Your purpose doesn't have to be grandiose. It doesn't have to change the world. It just has to matter to you deeply enough that you're willing to suffer for it, to sacrifice for it, to keep building when every rational reason says to stop, because that's when the fortress is truly tested, when the easy path is to quit, when the comfortable choice is to settle, when the safe option is to retreat. And if your purpose is clear, if it's been integrated into your identity at the deepest level, you don't quit, you adjust, you adapt, you find another way, but you don't abandon the fortress. The ninth pillar is gratitude and perspective. This might seem contradictory to confidence, but is actually essential, because confidence without gratitude becomes arrogance. It becomes blind to the support you've received, the opportunities you've been given, the luck that played a role in your success. And arrogance creates a false fortress, impressive on the outside, rotten on the inside. Unbreakable confidence is built on the recognition that you're standing on the shoulders of those who came before you, that you've been given gifts you didn't earn, that circumstances aligned in your favor in ways you can't take credit for. This perspective doesn't diminish your achievements, it deepens them. It allows you to hold your success with humility while still claiming your power, to acknowledge the help you received while still recognizing the work you put in, to be grateful for the opportunity while still taking full ownership of what you did with it. The fortress is stronger when it's built with gratitude, because gratitude keeps you grounded. It keeps you learning. It keeps you open to feedback and growth, and openness is what allows the fortress to evolve rather than stagnate. Perspective also means zooming out, seeing your current challenges in the context of your entire life, recognizing that what feels catastrophic today might be inconsequential in a year, understanding that failure is temporary, setbacks are lessons, and obstacles are opportunities disguised as problems. When you can maintain this perspective, when you can see the bigger picture, even in moments of immediate difficulty, your confidence becomes unshakable, because you know that this moment, however painful, is just one scene in a much longer story. Carnegie faced immense challenges throughout his rise to power, but he maintained perspective. He understood that every difficulty was temporary, that every setback was simply the universe testing his resolve. And this perspective allowed him to stay calm when others panicked, to see opportunity when others saw catastrophe, to maintain his vision when immediate circumstances made that vision seem impossible. The fortress stands because it's built with eyes on the horizon, not just on the immediate ground. Gratitude also creates resilience. When you're genuinely grateful for what you have, for how far you've come, for the opportunities still available to you, you become harder to defeat, because you're not operating from scarcity. You're not grasping desperately at success because you feel you have nothing. You're building from abundance, from a recognition that you've already overcome so much, already achieved more than you once thought possible, already been given more than you deserved. And from that foundation, you can take risks. You can face challenges. You can put yourself on the line, because you know that even if you fail, you still have so much to be grateful for. The final pillar is strategic patience. Unbreakable confidence is not impulsive. It's not reckless. It's not the false bravado of someone who acts without thinking. It's the quiet certainty of someone who knows that great things take time, that fortresses aren't built in a day, that the most powerful structures are built slowly, methodically, with attention to every detail. This requires patience, not passive waiting, but active patience. The patience to build correctly rather than quickly, to prioritize quality over speed, to trust the process even when results aren't immediately visible. This is where most people fail. They start building their fortress with enthusiasm, but when they don't see immediate results, when the walls don't rise as fast as they hoped, when the structure doesn't look as impressive as they imagined, they abandon it. They convince themselves it's not working. They look for shortcuts. They jump to a different foundation before they finish the one they started, and they never build anything that lasts because they never commit long enough to see it through. Edison spent years on experiments that led nowhere. Ford iterated on his designs relentlessly before achieving his vision. Lincoln spent decades in politics, facing defeat after defeat before reaching the presidency. These men understood that building something real requires time. Not wasted time, not passive time, but invested time. Time spent laying foundations that will support the weight of what you're trying to build. Time spent developing skills that will be required when the opportunity arrives. Time spent preparing in obscurity for performance in the spotlight. The fortress of confidence is built in private long before it's visible in public. The world sees the finished structure and calls it overnight success, but you know the truth. You know, the thousands of hours spent when nobody was watching, the countless decisions made in darkness, the relentless commitment maintained when there was no evidence it would pay off. This is strategic patience, the understanding that real confidence is built brick by brick through consistent action over extended time, with a trust in the process that doesn't require immediate validation. This patience also applies to how you respond to setbacks. The impatient person sees a setback and panics. They question everything. They consider abandoning the mission. But the person with strategic patience sees a setback and adjusts. They recognize that obstacles are inevitable, that delays are part of the process, that detours often lead to destinations better than the original plan. The fortress stands because it was built with the patience to withstand storms, to weather delays, to persist through periods when progress was invisible. Now, understand this, these pillars are not separate, they're integrated. They reinforce each other. Self-trust enables action. Action builds clarity. Clarity focuses learning. Learning strengthens purpose. Purpose sustains patience. Patience allows for honesty. Honesty deepens trust. Every pillar supports every other pillar, and together they create a structure that cannot be shaken by external circumstance. This is the architecture of unbreakable confidence, not a single trait, not a lucky personality, but a deliberately constructed system of thought, belief, an action that transforms you into someone who cannot be defeated because you've built something inside yourself that defeat cannot touch. The fortress doesn't make life easier. It doesn't eliminate challenges. It doesn't guarantee that everything will go according to plan. What it does is far more valuable. It ensures that no matter what happens, you will handle it. That no matter what obstacle arises, you will find a way through it. That no matter how many times you get knocked down, you will stand back up. Because the fortress is not just confidence, it's capability. It's the internalization of proof, gathered through action, that you are someone who shows up, who follows through, who adapts, who persists, who learns, who grows. Every morning you wake up, you have a choice. You can allow your mind to be invaded by doubt, by comparison, by fear, by all the voices that tell you that you're not enough, you're not ready, you should wait for better circumstances. Or you can guard the gates. You can select your thoughts with the precision of a warrior choosing weapons. You can feed your mind the truths that build rather than the lies that destroy. You can take action that reinforces your vision rather than undermining it. You can show up as the architect of your own fortress rather than a passive victim of circumstance. This is not easy work. If it were easy, everyone would do it. Everyone would walk around with unbreakable confidence, immune to the chaos of the world. But most people never build the fortress because they don't understand that it's their responsibility to build it. They wait for confidence to arrive. They hope that someday they'll feel ready. They wish that circumstances would align perfectly so they could finally step into their power. And they wait their entire lives, standing in the rubble of foundations they never finished, surrounded by materials they never used, wondering why others seem to have something they don't. But you know better now. You understand that confidence is not found, it's forged. Not given, it's earned. Not inherited, it's constructed. And the construction begins now. Not when you feel ready. Not when circumstances are perfect. Not when you've figured everything out. Now, today, this moment. With whatever materials you currently have. With whatever knowledge you currently possess. With whatever time and energy and resources are currently available to you. Start with one brick. One decision. One action that moves you toward the person you're becoming rather than keeping you trapped as the person you've been. Choose one empowering thought and hold it against one disempowering belief. Take one risk that scares you. Have one difficult conversation. Read one chapter of wisdom. Practice one skill deliberately. And then tomorrow, do it again. And the day after that, again. Because this is how fortresses are built, not in moments of inspiration, but through the accumulated weight of countless small decisions stacked deliberately over time until they create something that cannot be moved. The world doesn't need more people pretending to be confident. It needs more people building real confidence through real action. It needs more people willing to face their fears and move forward anyway. More people committed to becoming who they're capable of becoming rather than settling for who circumstances made them. More people building fortresses in their minds that allow them to stand firm when everything around them is chaos. You are that person. Not someday, not when you're ready, now. You are the architect. You are the builder. You are the guardian of your own fortress. And every thought you choose from this moment forward is either construction or destruction. Every action you take is either reinforcement or erosion. Every decision you make is either strengthening the walls or creating cracks in the foundation. There is no neutral ground. You are either building something magnificent or allowing something to crumble. The fortress of unbreakable confidence is not a destination you arrive at and then rest. It's a daily practice, a moment-by-moment choice, a commitment renewed every time doubt whispers, every time fear appears, every time circumstances threaten to overwhelm you. It's the choice to show up anyway, to act anyway, to believe in yourself anyway, not because you're certain of the outcome, but because you're certain of your ability to handle whatever outcome arrives. Think about what this means for your life right now, not in some abstract future, right now. What fortress are you building? What thoughts are you allowing to take root in your mind? What actions are you taking or avoiding? What standards are you holding yourself to? What purpose is driving you forward? What learning are you pursuing? What emotional mastery are you developing? These are not philosophical questions, they're practical ones. They're the difference between living a life of quiet desperation and living a life of powerful purpose. The people you admire, the ones who seem to operate with unshakable confidence, who face challenges with calm certainty, who build extraordinary things while others make excuses, they're not different from you. They don't have access to secret knowledge you lack. They weren't born with special gifts you don't possess. They simply understood what you now understand. Confidence is architecture. It's built, it's constructed. It's forged through deliberate action, conscious thought, and relentless commitment to a vision that matters more than comfort. And they paid the price. They did the work nobody sees. They made the decisions nobody celebrates. They showed up on the days when showing up felt impossible. They acted when action required everything they had. They faced their fears so many times that fear became familiar, then manageable, then irrelevant. They built their fortress brick by brick, knowing that most people would never see the construction, only the finished structure. And they built it anyway because they understood that the fortress isn't built for others to admire, it's built so you can stand firm when everything else is falling apart. This is the raw truth about confidence that nobody wants to tell you. It requires sacrifice. Not the sacrifice of who you are, but the sacrifice of who you're not. The sacrifice of comfort, of certainty, of the easy path, of the voice that says tomorrow when the answer needs to be today. The sacrifice of excuses, of justifications, of all the stories you tell yourself about why you can't, why you shouldn't, why the timing isn't right. Building the fortress requires that you burn those stories to the ground and build on the ashes. It requires that you stop waiting, stop preparing, stop planning for the perfect moment. Because the perfect moment is a myth designed to keep you paralyzed. The perfect moment is now, with all its imperfections, with all its uncertainty, with all its risk. This moment, right here, is the only moment you have to lay another brick. And if you wait for conditions to improve, for circumstances to align, for confidence to arrive before you start building, you will wait forever. And when your life is over and you look back at all the potential you never actualized, all the dreams you never pursued, all the fortresses you never built, the only thing you'll regret is that you waited. So don't wait. Don't make the mistake of thinking that someday, when you're ready, when you know more, when you feel more confident, then you'll start building. Start now. Start imperfectly. Start scared. Start uncertain. But start. Because every day you wait is another day the fortress isn't growing. Another day your mind remains vulnerable to the attacks of doubt and fear. Another day you're not becoming the person you're capable of becoming. The architects of history, the builders of empires, the creators of movements, they all started before they were ready. They all built before they had blueprints. They all acted before they had certainty. What separated them from everyone else wasn't talent or luck or circumstance. It was the willingness to build the fortress while under fire, to lay bricks while the storm raged, to construct something permanent while everything around them was temporary and chaotic. They understood that waiting for perfect conditions is the same as never building at all. Your fortress is waiting, not in some future version of yourself, not in circumstances that have yet to arrive. Right here, right now, in this moment, in the decision you make after you finish reading these words, in the action you take when the familiar fear appears, in the thought you choose when doubt whispers. The fortress is built in these moments, the small ones, the unglamorous ones, the ones nobody will ever know about except you. And that's the final truth you need to understand. The fortress is built for you, not for applause, not for recognition, not for validation from others, for you. so that when life tests you, and it will test you, you have something inside yourself that cannot be shaken. So that when circumstances try to break you, and they will try, you have walls that cannot be penetrated. So that when doubt and fear come knocking, and they will come knocking, you can acknowledge them from behind gates that will not open. This is the power of understanding confidence as architecture. It removes the mystery. It eliminates the excuse that some people just have it and others don't. It gives you the blueprint. It shows you exactly what needs to be built and how to build it. Self-trust through action, clarity through vision, honesty through assessment, capability through learning, strength through purpose, mastery through practice, resilience through patience, wisdom through association, power through emotional control. These are your materials. These are your tools. These are the principles that, when applied with consistency and commitment, will create something inside you that the world cannot touch. A fortress of confidence so strong that failure becomes feedback, rejection becomes redirection, and obstacles become opportunities. A fortress so well built that you can take risks others won't take, because you know that even if you fall, the fortress stands. Even if you fail, the structure remains. Even if you lose everything external, you still have something internal that cannot be taken. Build it. Not because it's easy. Build it because you refuse to live another day in a mind that's vulnerable to every wind of circumstance. Build it because you've tasted what it feels like to doubt yourself, and you've decided that taste will no longer define your experience. Build it because you know, deep in your bones, that you're capable of more than you've shown, more than you've attempted, more than you've allowed yourself to become. And the only thing standing between who you are and who you could be is the fortress you haven't built yet. The materials are in front of you. The blueprint is in your hands. The time is now. And the question is not whether you can build this fortress. The question is whether you will, whether you'll make the choice right now to be the architect of your own unbreakable confidence, to take responsibility for the structure of your mind, to commit to the daily work of construction, to show up brick by brick, decision by decision, action by action, until you've built something that cannot fall. This is your moment. This is your fortress. This is your choice. Build it like your life depends on it, because in the deepest sense it does. Everything you want to achieve, everyone you want to become, every dream you've held but haven't pursued it, all requires the fortress. And the fortress requires you, right here, right now, starting today, building with whatever you have, creating something permanent in a temporary world, constructing confidence that doesn't crumble when tested but grows stronger with every challenge faced. The fortress awaits its architect.